everyone, Moro here with another craft video. This time I will be showing you how I made a posable doll of the character Orostor Fu and he from the anime Gachiakuta. What inspired me to make this guy into a doll? Well, if you watched my last video about making that medieval style board game piece holder for my dad's birthday as a gift, you would know that for special occasions, like for birthdays and Christmases, I enjoy making custom crafts for my friends and family members and giving it to them as gifts. I am showcasing what I made for my cousin. My cousin is really into the anime Gachiakuta, and her favorite character in particular is Orostor Fu. I knew I was going to create something related to her favorite character, but the question was exactly what? In order to prepare for this project, I had to watch the anime that adapted her favorite manga. Luckily for me, they just started airing the first season of the anime last year. What if underneath the mask, Fu was secretly a wrestler? All crafts have a beginning, even if the first stages look far removed from the final product. Why do I have a box of WWE wrestlers, you ask? Well, it's for projects like these. In the past, I planned to turn these guys into custom action figures. I made a few since then, but largely abandoned the idea to proceed with making more due to how time-consuming it was. Now I have this box of WWE action figures just sitting around collecting dust. It's time to make use of them. What I like most about these figures in particular is how they have elbow and knee joints. Not all action figures have those. That's why I particularly sourced these figures. I look through the box and pretty much choose a random one from it. This guy will act as my Orostor Fu doll's skeleton. Would that make Fu a mech then? Now that I've selected which action figure I'm going to use for this project, I start off with scoring the figure all over with an X-Acto knife. I'm going to cover the body with fabric, so in order for the glue to have a strong bond to the figure, I must make grooves in the plastic for the glue to grip onto, giving it a stronger bond. I cannot stress this enough when I say this. If you make a similar project like the one I am making here, and you are using an X-Acto knife, please be extremely careful. It is very easy to slip and accidentally cut yourself with the knife. Once the figure has been scored all over, it is time to move on to putting some meat onto those bones. Remember, this WWE figure is just a skeleton for my overall project. Taking the same fuzzy blanket that I used in my last craft video, I cut the fabric into smaller pieces, intending to later glue and wrap them around the figure to create the meat of the doll. This will give it a nice cushiony and soft feeling to the touch, as opposed to a bony, hard touch. I am aiming for a plush doll, after all. I then stack a few layers of these pieces of fabric together. In addition to giving the doll a plush feeling, I also want to sculpt a very round shape for this doll, giving it thicker and rounder arms, thicker and rounder legs, and lastly, a very large and round head. Think of the typical chibi anime design, and its features. That's what I want to aim for and achieve with the final look of this doll. In order to attach the first layer of fabric to this doll, I apply dots of super glue to the arms of the action figure. I then wrap the fabric around the arm, securing it in place with more glue. I apply the same method to the opposite arm. I do them simultaneously to make sure the shapes are the same. I just keep going along applying the glue then fabric, carefully avoiding putting fabric over the figure's joints. If I glue fabric to the joints, I could accidentally do two things. 1. Accidentally glue the joints shut. 2. Limit the mobility of the figure by blocking it with bulky fabric. Now moving on to the legs, I basically applied the same method and logic that I did for the arms. I just want to preface here that I didn't have a complete plan going into this project. It was mostly experimental. I haven't built many things like this at this point in time. You will see many things I do that I will go back on and try something else. Here, for example, the WWE figure's legs are quite close together, so I shouldn't have bulked up too much of this fabric here, particularly on the inner sides of the legs. When I later applied the outer skin layer of fabric to the legs of the doll, I found the movement of the legs to be restricted. So I had to go back and cut and remove some of the fabric in between the legs. Moving on to that outer skin layer I was just talking about, this plush fabric that I cut out from the blanket is simply to add shape and softness to the doll. It looks a little rough and messy without anything concealing it. This means I have to cover it up like a fresh layer of paint. Except my layer of paint is this thin white and stretchable polyester fabric that I will place over top of the plushy fabric. So here, I am eyeballing and cutting out the approximate amount of fabric I will need for this task. But why I'm applying this outer layer of fabric before adding the plush fabric to the body? Well, that is because I want to glue and attach the top of this outer layer of polyester fabric to the shoulder and armpits of the figure. That way, the fabric does not slip off when the figure moves. Once the fabric is secured to the shoulder and armpit of the figure, I fold over the edge of the fabric and glue it to the other side of the fabric to create the seam. Now, I just want to share with you that I was quite crunched for time and resources, so I wouldn't recommend using as much super glue as I had in this project here. For securing the seams of the fabric, I would 100% recommend either sewing or using a flexible yet strong fabric glue for this portion of the project, and many other portions of this project you will see. Although strong and effective, super glue can be expensive for the small quantity that comes with each bottle. It also dries hard. For a flexible doll project like this one, that's not ideal. I did end up with a few stiff sections of the fabric because I did it this way. Because Christmas was on the horizon when I was working on this project, I opted into cutting corners, like taking the extra time it would have taken to sew these pieces of fabric together. Super glue is much faster, but as I mentioned, it has its downsides. You also have to be a little more careful when using it. It's very possible to accidentally glue your fingers together, and although it's possible to separate them with household solutions, it is challenging. Always watch where your fingers are when using it and avoid touching drying, super glued surfaces. At the other ends of the fabric now, I'm going to glue the ends of the plush fabric itself to the figure's wrists, tucked all around and into a puffed-like sleeve. Remember how I mentioned earlier about later down the line having to remove some plush fabric from in between the legs? Well, that's what I'm doing here. This is when I discovered that I needed to do that in order to fit in the outer layer of fabric here and to restore the figure's leg mobility. Again, I eyeball how much fabric I'm going to need to cover the legs with an outer layer of fabric. I essentially create a layer of pants here and cut it out like so. Then, I follow through with the same process as I did with the arms, gluing the top of the fabric to the plastic of the figure itself, then bunching the fabric at the bottom of the legs where the ankles are and gluing them to the plush fabric. Once that is done, time to move on to the head. This will arguably take the most plush fabric to cover. I want it to be very large, spherical, and round. There's a reason I didn't start with the head first, but rather the arms and legs first. This head is going to be very large, and it would have gotten in the way of working on other parts of the body. I switch to the hot glue gun to adhere the rest of the layers of fabric. This glue is more cost effective, so it's nice to use it where I can. The main downside to hot glue is that it glues on in great blobs. Not ideal for something that I want to be soft to the touch, but I figured that with how many thick layers of plush fabric I am applying here, it won't be felt through the fabric once the project is complete. Once again, time to apply the skin or outer layer of fabric to the head. I am being very rough with my application of the fabric here, stretching it and pulling it back as much as possible. It doesn't matter if there will be seams, folds, or bumps showing on the sides or back side of the head, because I will be covering up these areas anyways with the character's hair. Now moving on to bulking up the feet. I am not going to sculpt any toes or anything like that. I am just going for a very simplified, almost shoe-like shape. The next outer layer of fabric for the feet are just going to be the shoes anyways. I'm not going to be that detailed with it. As I stretch and pull the fabric over top to create the shoes, I am bunching it at the top and cutting it off there. There's a top layer to Fu's shoes that I can cut out of the fabric as a separate shape and glue on top later to cover up the messiness. Now using armature wire, I create the hands. My intent is to have these bendable and posable. To help maintain durability and to create a surface to glue on, I wrap each finger with surgical tape. Armature wire may lose its ability to hold a pose over time, but my intent is for the hands to not be bended too much. Now I will apply fabric and glue it over top of the hands. I will then proceed to carefully cut out each finger. I noticed when I did this, the fabric was split on the sides. I had to go back and glue them, but due to the fact that I had only super glue and hot glue for this project, I had to use super glue. When the super glue dried, the fingers unfortunately lost some bendability. They still had some though, they were just a little stiff. Next time, I will definitely buy some bendable fabric glue or something like that. Now I am skipping straight to making the clothing, starting with the pants. Notice how I didn't bother adding the plush fabric to the main body of the figure? Well, I figure I just skip over that part due to the fact that I will already be covering up that layer with many layers of fabric when creating the character's clothing, which will make it still soft to the touch anyways. The pants on Fu are very puffy and baggy, but tight at the ankles. I shall mimic this by eyeballing it with the fabric on the doll here. Now moving on to Fu's top, when I first looked at it, I thought it was something similar to a poncho. But upon further inspection, it's just a really baggy top. Baggy arm sleeves, etc. To replicate the shape of this top, I decided to cut out a poncho-like shape from the fabric I have and pull it over the doll's head through the hole I made. I then pinned the triangular shape areas underneath each armpit and cut them out, leaving about 1 centimeter on each side to fold over and later glue and create seams. I also being careful not to cut too tightly to the arms because I want there to be extra fabric for the sleeves to create that bell-like shape in the sleeves that Fu has. Once I glued down all of the seams of Fu's shirt and completed that, I tucked another piece of tube-shaped fabric inside of the neck hole and secured it with glue there. It should be long enough that it can be folded over a few times to create that very baggy scarf thing that Fu has on his outfit. Now that I've gotten the gist of his outfit done, I can move on to shaping the hair on this guy. For the hair, I coated a piece of fabric with fabric glue and flattened another piece on top, and let that dry for about 5 hours. After drying, I now have a thicker piece of fabric that I can work with for the hair. I know I said that I didn't have any fabric glue to work with. I do. It's just that this fabric glue that I currently have, I find that it just doesn't stick very good. I'm not sure if I'm not using it with the correct type of fabric. It's just, it doesn't, the bond doesn't hold. So that's why I resorted to using super glue and hot glue for most of the areas of my project, and only used that fabric glue to make thicker fabric by gluing 2 pieces together. That seemed to work, but not for small areas. Looking at the different head angles of Fu, I determine what shapes I will need to create in order to replicate the look of Fu's hair. So I go ahead and outline a bunch of these bunches of hair onto my thicker fabric and cut them out. I then glue them to the top of the doll's head once I am done. Using the leftover doubled up glued fabric, I cut out a box-shaped piece and fold it and glue it together. This is supposed to represent the Raider's lantern that Fu wears around his waist. As you can see here, I am also beginning to add line work to the doll. I am using waterproof black micron pens, but it's not showing up too good on the fabric. Once I am done painting the doll, I think I will go back with some black paint and go over the lines once again to make them darker. I want this doll to look like it came straight out of a frame of the anime. Alright, so there's the initial rough layer of the line art done, but there's no other colors on his design yet. I used white fabric for this doll for that exact reason, so I can paint it whichever color I want later. I am not the richest person in the world, so I try to save money where I can by not buying a bolt of fabric for every color in existence. I know there are fabric dyes out there, but I like to be as cost effective as possible, so I'm going to add color to this doll by painting it with acrylics. As you can see, I am doing a base coating of light grayish paint on the areas of Fu's clothing where it is white. Usually you never want to paint with pure blacks or whites because it can make a design look flat. His clothing is sort of this white, gray, beige color anyways. When painting fabrics with acrylics, you have to really water it down, because otherwise it'll make whatever you are painting stiff. For clothing, stiffness is not ideal. The main thing about this method though is that it's a little messy, so you have to hang it somewhere that'll safely catch any dripping paint. It can also take extra time to dry. Now, I've already gone and dyed this piece of cloth that is supposed to wrap around Fu's waist. As you can see here, it is now completely dry and it is still flexible. Now moving on to the skin tone. And then the hair, which is this burgundy red color. At least the bottom layer of hair is. I've used a hair tie, as you can see here, to pull up the upper layer of Fu's hair. The top layer of Fu's hair is this white color with a very small bit of beige pink in it. I don't want to accidentally get any red coloring on the top layer here. It will be hard to undo since burgundy is a dark color. However, there are ways around it in case I do get some red paint on the white parts by accident, which evidently does happen later down the line. I've also covered up Fu's face here with saran wrap. His skin is a lighter color, which I also don't want to accidentally get the darker color of burgundy on. Moving on to the purples. The Raiders' outfits from Gachiakuta, an opposing faction to the protagonist of the show, in case you guys haven't watched it, are very interesting. They contain various shades of purple, not just one. The two main shades, at least present on Fu's design, is this more pure purple color, and this purple with some black in it. Since I am starting with Fu's scarf, which is the more purple, I will prepare such a batch with that color, simply eyeballing it, looking back and forth at what I'm mixing and the character reference. I have this purple paint, but it had too much red in it, so I have to mix some blue in it to match the reference. To be efficient, I go ahead and do all of the parts of the clothing that possess the same purple since I have the paint mixture ready to go, rather than jumping back and forth between colors and having to constantly clean my brush and such. Now, since I was in a rush to get this figure completed, I did add more paint to the mixtures than I did water in order to achieve richer colors. This did cause the fabric to feel more stiff once it all dried. No worries though. I'm trying to go for that look of being something in between a plush doll and a plastic figure. Now time to paint these little brown string details found throughout Fu's clothing. For details as small as these, I don't bother watering down the paint at all. And then it's time to move on to doing the tiny metallic details on Fu's clothing, like these clasps on the shirt, zippers on the scarf, and the buckle on his belt. Now remember how I said that there was a way to undo accidentally painting darker colors of paint on parts that are supposed to be light? Well, I simply dry brush back on the light colors over top of these areas. Just make sure that these areas are dry first, if not, this method won't work very well. Now time to paint on that darker purple onto that quilt pattern on either side of his shirt, then let that dry. As the outfit is drying after applying all of that paint, I take the time to construct P, Fu's vital instrument. So basically, I made some more of that doubled up fabric that I made, combining two pieces of white polyester fabric that I have by using Eileen's fabric fusion glue, that glue I was talking about. After 5 hours, this material is dry enough to cut. Because it is thick, I can easily construct box-like shapes with it, which is basically what he is comprised of, a series of rectangular, box-like shapes, so I cut out as many of those shapes that I know I'll need. I know I skipped a few steps here. I forgot to record it, so my bad on that one. Basically, what I did was I built a metal skeleton for he out of this armature wire that I have, which will allow for some bendability. As you can see here for the rest of the shapes, like He's head, I had to cut out some round shapes from the thicker fabric that I made and glue it to the rest of the body. Looking pretty good so far, I think. Pretty accurate to the overall shape of he, just needs some color. But the areas that I've painted on Fu are dry now, so I should apply the final layers of paint. This means that I finally get the chance to paint on his eyes, an iconic mask. Again, because these are some smaller details, I am not watering down the paints for these parts. Now, as mentioned, I am going back over the rough line work I had made with black acrylic paint. To give 3D objects more of a 2D look, you should apply line work to as many areas as possible, at least to that typical of a static drawn image. Again, referencing this official character artwork of Fu for the official anime, I noticed that the line work on the quilt pattern is white, so I will apply that same look to my doll here. Giving time for the line work on Fu to dry, I revisit He and apply an initial layer of paint. He's main colors are teal and burgundy, so I started with those. Then, once the first layer of paint is dry, I apply the paint to the smaller areas of color found on He's design, like the white areas around He's eyes. and again red burgundy color to He's claws. Now there are also areas of Fu's vital instrument that look to be fur. I need to replicate this on my doll of his doll. I have a strip of this white furry-like material available to achieve the look that I want. All I have to do is cut out sections of it and glue it onto the doll. Now, what's interesting about He's fur is that there are sections that have long fur and sections that have short fur. The middle section of He's tail possesses this short hair-like material. For this area, I will use that fluffy blanket material that I was using earlier. Like many parts of Fu's design, not many parts are purely white. So that means I have to paint He's fur areas an off-white color. I watered down some yellow paint, apply it to the fur, and immediately rinse it out, which you don't see here, but I do, off screen. I'm maintaining that mainly white but off-white look. Once everything is completely dry, I am essentially done, but not quite. There are many accessories that the character possesses that I kept separate to work on, but I did not attach yet. Now it is time to glue those things, like the belt, sash, lantern, etc., to the clothing. And there we go! My Fu Orostor doll from the awesome series Gachiakuta is done. He's posable, soft, and all of that good stuff. I didn't really go into this project with much of a plan, so I'm glad it turned out decently. If I were to make another doll/plush action figure in a similar style in the future, I would definitely not be using as much glue as I did. I'd probably do more sewing. As I mentioned, I was a little bit on a time crunch to get this doll done on time for Christmas, so that I could gift it to my cousin on Christmas Day. She looked quite happy when she received it, so I'll chalk that up to as being a success. I am really looking forward to seeing Fu more in the anime when the next season comes out. He seems like such a funny and cool character, honestly. My cousin advised me on where to start reading in the manga from where the anime ended, so I think I'll get going on that next. Thank you everyone for watching! I hope you enjoyed seeing Orostor Fu come to life in this 3D version of him, and I hope this video brought you some creative inspiration. If you enjoyed watching this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel to stay tuned for my next creative adventure. As always, see you tomorrow, whenever that might be. Goodbye!